bet you can't do the Walstad method. I bet you can't. I'll tell you what I mean. So what I've been doing recently, I've been visiting a lot of friends' fish rooms, and I've been going to a lot of fish stores and stuff like that with people, and what I've realised is a lot of people have different interpretations for different things. And I went to my friend's, he's got a big fish room, he breeds a lot of angels and stuff like that, Amazonian type fish. And what he said to me, I feed my fish lightly, and I've always considered myself quite a heavy feeder, and I was kind of like, well, let me see you feed your fish, because we all like watching fish eat, don't we? And he fed his fish, and he fed like well more as a light feeder than I do as a heavy feeder, and it got me thinking, so what one person thinks is light feeding is heavy, well heavier than what another person might deem as like heavy feeding. So it's all very subjective. So when we're looking at stuff like the Walstad method, obviously Diana Walstad explains in her book how much you should be feeding, doesn't she? So we need to bear this in mind. And obviously when we've got a planted tank where an ecosystem where we're absorbing nutrients using plants, we need to consider this, and we need to understand what this is doing in our aquarium, obviously. And I noticed this when I was visiting fish rooms, like I was asking questions to people and stuff like that, and I was asking questions and stuff like that, and I realised some quite interesting stuff that made me think about my videos. The first thing I noticed was some guy was collecting his own driftwood from local woods, and he was putting it in his tanks, and he said that I like driftwood, he said, but I like the natural stuff because I find it really easy to grow moss on, and which is okay, fair enough. And I looked at it, and it wasn't moss, it was hair algae. So all this wood is obviously it's decaying, releasing nutrients into the water, and because of that it's got moss growing on it. So now obviously his tank's flying, and that algae's there doing its thing, and it's not an outbreak that's spreading anywhere else in his tank, so he's good to go, do you know what I mean? But it's not, at the same time, it's not moss. So we need to be mindful of stuff like that, don't we, when we're setting up a fish room? You know, that's one thing that is subjective, that's one thing that's subjective that can have an impact on our aquariums, isn't it? It's, you know, stuff like that. But that's just one example. Another example was guy did a lot of angelfish breeding. All his tanks were set up. He had about 12 tanks in his fish room, and all of them got all different breeding pairs. And he told me that angels like low flow, so low flow environments in his tanks. And what I noticed, and he was a heavy feeder, low flow, and all his tanks had cyanobacteria in it, all of them, all 12 tanks. So it, you know, that made me realise that. So his objective experience, I like low flow and I feed heavy. Obviously bumps the phosphate right up in all his tanks, low flow, dead spots, detritus building up, and cyanobacteria. Now, that wasn't having a massive impact on his tanks, but I'm just saying, you know, he's breeding fish. We're talking about ecosystems, aren't we? Like the Walstad method, the frothy fish method. These things can have impacts on our ecosystem, and we've got to be more in tune with these things if we're trying to set up an ecosystem where our plants are absorbing our nutrients. Because I always say, don't I, if our plants aren't growing, they're not absorbing the nutrients, and if they're not absorbing the nutrients, then you're relying on beneficial bacteria to do the job. So you may as well just throw a sponge filter in, because if them plants ain't growing, they're not doing nothing, they're in the system doing nothing. So yes, so all these things might have a massive impact on our systems if we're breeding and keeping angels and stuff like that, and plecos and any other breeding projects. Well, when you're trying to maintain an ecosystem, these things are like really important, aren't they? Because obviously we've got nutrient rich substrates and we've got low flow environments, or we should have. If we're hoping to optimize CO2 in our system, we should have a really low flow system, because otherwise if we're running like air and stuff like that, just gassing the CO2 that the substrates creating straight out to the system. And that's an example of why I said, you know, all these things we need to learn how to balance, don't we? We need to understand how to run a nutrient low environment and have our plants running at optimum in that environment to absorb all these nutrients. Otherwise our ecosystem isn't as effective as it could be, which is why I said how to avoid the newbie trap is set up a low tech planted tank, do your water changes, dose with liquid fert, and then we learn how to balance our tanks. We learn how to keep our tanks balanced, because we can adjust all our dials, can't we, on nutrients or lighting level. We can do water changes to reset the system, and then everything's controllable. And then once we learn how to dial that in, then the ecosystem, where all the nutrients in the substrate and there is no flow, and we're trying not to do as many water changes, then it all plays into that then, doesn't it? We've learned how to dial it in. And obviously some people say not to feed your fish, to let the ecosystem feed the fish. I don't agree with that, because it's a closed environment. Let's have a look around the fish room, let me show you what I've been up to, because it's been 2 weeks. So this tank got a ton of Java moss off a friend, donated me it. It was covered in different types of algae when I got in. It was covered in different types of algae and stuff. It's very cloudy. I've been feeding got some new algae wafers, and I find every time I feed them the tank goes cloudy. I need to do a water change, so there's that. But yeah, I've got tons of Java fern, shrimp, snails. Been picking away at that, and it's starting to look a bit tidier than when I got it. It was all jet black when I got it. So, but even if I just take the, even if I got rid of the mother plant eventually and just kept the new stuff that's growing on it, I'm still gonna have a ton of Java moss. Not Java moss, Java fern. Look, there's bits of it all around the tank, so it's spreading itself out. I'm gonna leave it. There's absolutely tons of shrimp in here. The snails are flying. Everything's flying in here. The crenum is throwing a big new shoot out. The snails have knocked that over. The bristlenose plecos they keep popping out now and again. They're absolute units now. I fed this with the same pellet, the same algae wafers, and check them out. I'm not going to tell you what they are. You can see they're angels, but I'm not telling you what they are. Yeah, I've got them in, the wild angels, and they're not doing too well. My friend, I was talking, and we've got some. I was itching to get my Manica Peru breeding, and my friend said he'd give me a breeding pair to play with, so I asked him for a pair, got a pair. They've been breeding straight away, so yeah, mate. So I've got, give me 5. I've got 2 paired up straight away, laid eggs. I've got 3 over there. I'm going to take them, get shut of them, so I've got a pair. I'm going to set up a breeding setup for these, so I've got the brine shrimp, got everything going on, ready to raise these up, and I'm excited. I can't wait to get them going. What else have we got? Oh, my engine. Remember my engine I was talking about? Look at this. It's absolutely flying already. I'm hoping the tank's going to balance itself. I've moved a few bits around. It's been 2 weeks, hasn't it? So yeah, but there you go. So we got this. I haven't had much luck lately. My display tank in the living room kicked off with cyanobacteria, and then I noticed my angels hadn't fed in a couple of days, so I turned the flow off, fed them. They didn't touch it. I looked, and they had worms. So I've been treating for worms. They've mostly cleared up, but I'm just not having much luck at the moment, guys. And this was after me getting these, and yeah, it is what it is. I've figured it out, you know, and treated them. But I'm starting to think I've got 4 males, so I'm going to have to get female Manica Peru, whatever you want to call it. I always call them Manica Peru, because everyone says Manica Peru, but the Peru, so it's not Paru, it's Peru. So I don't know, shout at me in the comments.